we celebrate Sukkot and the work of our foundation. I'd like to begin by asking each of you to tell us a little bit about your work and how did you end up pursuing this work around Gen Z?
Yeah, so I'll go first. And Rab, I want to thank you for moderating this panel tonight, to Evan for putting the event together, and for all of you for being here and being such influential members of the Adath community and the Legacy Society. So how I got my start is, I've always been really, really interested and focused on business and leadership and entrepreneurship, and I really wanted to do something about it, right? And so when I was 13 years old, I thought, what can I do at 13 years old that will accelerate me in the business world? And I thought, being that I'm 13, the only way to do that is to use my age as an advantage, right? And so what I did is I founded a company called Deciding Edge, and stemming from the success of that endeavor, I'm now the Director of Gen Z Studies at XYZ University, and we are a leading management consulting and generational research firm. So things are still going strong, and it's been a lot of fun, and always love opportunities like this to connect with all of you and to keep the dialogue going.
I will also say the same thing. Thank you for everyone for being here. Evan, great event. Rabbi, thank you once again for moderating the panel. As was mentioned in my bio, I started going into my junior year of high school as part of a business program at my high school, Minnetonka High School. And we looked into specifically teen breakfast and snacking trends. We did a semester-long study, and it really got me excited for a couple reasons. One being there was so little data on teen consumer and teen workplace, and really it was so hard to find anything that I saw it almost as an opportunity to say, why don't we then go field our own research? So along with 6 other peers and a sponsor project, we decided to run one of the first ever Gen Z consumer trend studies. And then that really got my idea saying, this was a great semester-long project, but the dialogue doesn't end here. And then over the past 3 years, as it was mentioned, I graduated high school in 2017. I decided not to go to college and pursue this full-time, and working alongside my dad, David Stone, who unfortunately could not be here tonight. We have been really continuously updating data and really staying on top of what is next in the consumer world for the next generation of consumers and employees when it looks at Gen Z. And I just look forward, and every time I find out something new data, it really does get me excited, and that's why I'm here today, because any opportunity I have to share data about our generation, especially with a group of community members, I will seize that opportunity.
Great, so your ingenuity, your entrepreneurship is clear, and your passion, each of you, your passion for this work is clear. What have you learned about Gen Z when it comes to engaging with this field and thinking about legacy?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's very important for everyone to understand that. So I want to do a little exercise. I want everyone to close your eyes. Think about what life was like when you were my age, when you were 16 years old, okay? And what do you remember? And I want you to think about that, and then take 30 seconds to talk to the person next to you.
When I was 16, pretty similar, I guess.
All right, so if I can have everyone bring it back, and if I can get someone to tell me a little bit about the person that you saw. Anybody up here in front so I can hear you? What do you remember about your life when you were 16 years old? Yeah.
We had to wear skirts to school every day.
Okay, so had to wear skirts to school every day, so sort of about some of the fashion trends of the time.
Well, it was
to some extent.
It wasn't about fashion as much as it was about restriction.
Right, so a lot of restriction. Okay. If I can get one more person, so we have a little bit more.
At 16, I had one more year of high school, and I was trying to figure out how I could stay out of the Army.
I have one more year of high school and was trying to figure out how to stay out of the Army. It's interesting. And then if I can get someone from my generation, someone up here or back there, tell me a little bit about the person that you see.
ACT.
So ACT is still a lot of schooling, right? And so my point there is that the different generations, the things that we want, they're not that different. Fitting in, succeeding in school, gaining independence, finding a date to homecoming, whatever it may be. But what's different is the way that we achieve those things. And so what we found, and Jonah can attest to this as well, is that there are a lot of different characteristics about Gen Z that are gonna affect us in the workplace and marketplace. And the four that I want to touch on are that we are a very competitive generation, we are a connected generation, we are a creative generation, and we're a generation that coexists.
Those are interesting. I like that. That was very interesting to see, Josh. And there's a lot of comparisons that really exemplify the differences between Gen Z and the other generations. And to break it down, I think when people tend to hear what generational differences and what generation am I a part of, the first thing people tend to think of is birth years. When was I born? And that really is what generation I'm a part of. But if you go beyond just birth years, somebody, well, looking at studying the generations will tell you that generational differences happen because each generation during their formative years, between the ages of 12 and 20, experiences unique events and conditions in the world, whether it be at home in the United States or globally, that affect the way at which they look at the world. So whether a baby boomer grew up in their time, and then you compare that to millennials and then my generation, a Gen Z will likely tell you that we grew up, post 9/11 in the midst of the 2009 recession and had parents telling us very realistic goals. And like Josh said, that resulted in us being a very competitive generation. And compared to any other generation, much more so, we are the most competitive generation in workplace trends since the baby boomers. So what we've seen in the early stages of Gen Z's careers is that we're actually getting along more so with baby boomers than any other generation, and people tend to hear that, because I think a lot of people, what they do, the biggest misconception when studying and looking at Gen Z is that everyone young is the same. I oftentimes hear people say they clump anyone under the age of 30, they put us in one group, and what they tend to do is call us millennials, and that really is the mistake to be made, not bashing millennials. Millennials are great, but we are drastically different. We have a lot of different wants and needs that when it comes to the workplace, and I think that really understanding the events and conditions that shaped my generation and why we are so different is probably the most important step when first recognizing Gen Z.
You guys have talked about kind of the nature of Gen Z and the trends of Gen Z. As we think about the topic of tonight, right, what is the future of legacy giving? So I'd be curious to hear, right, what does the word legacy mean to you, and what is the future of legacy giving as you think about Gen Z?
Yeah, absolutely. So what does legacy first mean to me? To me, when I hear the word legacy, the first thing I think of is legacy is almost in a way, a lifetime commitment, promising something for a long time. And actually, we good? Yeah. What has me excited is we just ran keeps on and off. Is that better? Yeah. There you go. Well, we recently, about a month ago, my company ran a study partnered with United Way to look at specifically my generation, Gen Z, and giving patterns. And when looking at the results, it actually has me so excited for the future of giving. We found out that right away that 65% of my generation has already donated time or money to a cause they are passionate about. But when we look at legacy giving specifically, I have concerns, but in the sense of a few ways. If you look at the ways that my generation has interacted with giving and causes, it's very much so transactional. It's very much so a one and done cause. And a great example of this is if you flash back and you remember the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. This is such a brilliant example for both positive and negative reasons. First, on the positive side, in the months between June and August of 2014, over $220 million were raised by over 125 million people posting videos that totaled, from 150 different countries, that totaled 10 billion views. And if you compare that $220 million raised in those 3 months in 2014, the total amount raised by that foundation in 2013 was $3 million. So in 3 months, and at the time, what was so cool is if you ask a Gen Zer, at the time of the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, they'll tell you, the latest celebrity to participate, the excitement they felt by participating in it, and exactly where their money went and how cool this cause really was. Now on the downside, if you flash forward 6 months, and you ask the same Gen Zer, what's happening with ALS research, they'll say, oh, that's done. Well, I participated in that cause, but we've moved on. When in reality, we all know that specifically looking at ALS, the fight to cure ALS is nowhere near done, but we moved on to something else. To me, when looking at legacy and legacy giving for Gen Z, it's about engaging us in a lifetime, not just a transaction, and positioning it in the sense of saying, you know, this is not just a one-time transaction, a one and done. This is about finding a cause that you are passionate about and really sticking with it for a lifetime. And I believe that we will be able to engage my generation in legacy giving. It's going to take explanation from the people in the room, whether it be parents, grandparents, explaining the value that you have felt by being part of such a powerful community. I know for a fact we will be able to engage my generation in giving, but legacy giving is something that is going to be foreign to us at first because we are so accustomed to transactional causes and one and done donations, if you would.
Yeah, I would definitely attest to that. A really big value in our Jewish culture and our religion is l'dor v'dor, right? Generation to generation. And because our generation, as Jonah said, is so similar to the baby boomers, we have such a unique opportunity to build a bridge between Gen Z, the baby boomers, and everyone in between. Because that's how legacy gets passed. And what legacy is taking the current trends of the time and keep modernizing and moving forward, but also sticking to your guns and maintaining your DNA. And what we're seeing now a lot of times is we're seeing a lot of particularly brands. They're modernizing unnecessarily, and they're not sticking true to who they are. And so in order for a brand to succeed, for a legacy to succeed, for a legacy society and foundation to succeed, we need to keep up with the times, we need to keep modernizing, we need to find causes that are relevant and that young people are passionate about, but we also need to maintain our DNA. Stick to a mission statement, find out what that mission is, and portray that to all generations.
Josh, you touched, maybe I'll try this
Walsh
one.
will share it all.
So Josh, you talked a little bit about faith and this concept of l'dor v'dor. I'm curious, as we're here, certainly representing different generations at this event, I'd like for you both to reflect on kind of the Jewish component of the work, or if there's something animating, either the work that you're doing, something that's inspired you, either through Adath or through your faith in general, and how Gen Zers even think about religion or how faith comes into the picture.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I've done a lot of work within the Jewish community when it comes to Gen Z engagements. And what we're finding is that it is so key for Gen Zs to be engaged, particularly in our conservative community. As you're seeing Orthodox, just look at birth rates, for example. When the birth rate for Orthodox is way higher, we're gonna maybe start to see a shrinking in the conservative movement. So it's so key for conservative youth through USY and other vehicles to start, picking up the slack a little bit. And I really think that we've been doing a nice job. It's also important to recognize that Gen Zs today might be getting involved in Jewish causes in different ways. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all, because Gen Zs are so competitive. You can talk about our sports commitments, our academic commitments, and we may have soccer practice 4 to 5 times a week. Doesn't mean we don't want to go to Talmud Torah, but sometimes it means that we need to find a different way to do it. And so it's sort of going to take building a bridge between organizations and educational institutions and Gen Zs to find an equilibrium that works. And that's when we're going to find a happy medium with engaged Jewish Gen Zers.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Josh said in that I think amongst Gen Zers, our definition of staying connected in community is likely different than other generations in the sense that, kind of as Josh said, you may picture staying connected as a young Jew in the community being that, you're either in the synagogue, but for us, there's so many ways for us to stay connected that I think for us, our Judaism really stays true to who we are in the sense of, and ideally like anyone else, we could do it sitting in the same room as anyone else, but we have ways to stay connected digitally through our phones, on group chats, and Jewish communities now, from what I hear from amongst my friends and personally experiencing it, I know that regardless of if I'm in Minnesota and my friends are elsewhere, I still stay connected. So I really think that Judaism will spread amongst Gen Zers regardless of location. But I can tell you that personally, as you asked here in the Adath community, being around so many other like-minded, motivated Jewish teenagers really found, I think, that inspired me to, and Josh, as you can tell, to be so mature at a young age and really find passion at a young age. And just this community in general really did fuel a lot of what I have done today. Absolutely.